Today we're talking about which classes to play for an easy raid spot in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. If you want to raid without having to beg for a spot, this is the perfect guide for you.
You are not prepared!
At number 5, we have Shamans. Shamans may seem like an odd choice, but lots of players are going to be re-rolling. You'll still see most groups running at least 2 Shamans, so there should be plenty of easy raid spots. Every raid group is going to bring at least 1 enhancement shaman. You offer great utility with your totems. For example, your Strength of Earth totem is better than Deathknights' Horn of Winter. At launch, you'll be offering competitive DPS, with some players expecting enhanced to top the meters in early dungeons and raids. And of course, Resto Shamans are still going to be a common 4th or 5th healer option. Although less required than in previous expansions, you still bring a lot to the table with your heals and your Mana Tide totem. Meanwhile, Ellie Shamans will be less common than in previous expansions, but some groups will still bring them. And they really aren't bad at launch DPS wise. At number 4, we have Druids. Restoration Druids will always take up a slot in 25-mans because of Revitalize. Plus, they offer competitive healing, arguably the second best in the entire game. Meanwhile, Feral Druids are super high single target DPS, and plenty of guilds will run them for DPS and tanking. And Boomkins absolutely destroy the meters on trash packs. Plus, they bring strong raid buffs to the table to increase haste, crit, and hit. Did I mention that all 3 Druid specs bring Battle Resurrection to the table? Plus Innervate. No pug will ever be sad to have too many Druids. Before we get to number 3, hit that like button. It's even easier than finding a raid spot on a Druid, which is really easy to begin with.
That was easy.
At number 3, we have Priest. Disc Priest will have a guaranteed raid spot. Power Word Shield simply makes 25-mans easier for everyone. Plus, Rapture is just so good for buffing up your raid and keeping your mana in check, while Power Infusion is a perfect buff for your best pumping mage. Meanwhile, Shadow Priests are very useful in every fight and they pump huge damage. And you'll definitely want that Vampiric Touch for replenishment mana regen for the raid. And of course, Dispersion has its uses in several fights. At number 2, we have Deathknights. Deathknights are the perfect choice to secure your raid spot. Since you have to level them, there just won't be as many ready day 1 for raids. Supply and demand, baby. The meta is at least 3 Deathknights minimum in 25-man raids, but many guilds will run up to 5 Deathknights. Blood Deathknights make perfect tanks to pair with Prot Paladins. They offer buffs like Hysteria, plus a raid-wide attack power buff. Meanwhile, Frost DKs are massive pumpers with good utility like their raid haste buff, and most guilds will want an unholy DK for the spell damage buff on targets. Before we get to the easiest class to raid with in Wrath, hit that subscription button and click on that notification bell. It really doesn't get any easier than that.
That was easy.
The number 1 spot for the easiest class to get a raid spot with is Paladins. Playing a Paladin is your best shot at getting into raid groups. Prot Paladins are the most desirable tanks in Wrath, and practically every 10 and 25-man group will bring one. On top of incredible AoE threat and utility, Prot Paladins offer Divine Guardian for 20% reduced raid damage for 6 seconds. Meanwhile, Ret Paladins will be locked in for most comps. They offer extremely high damage, plus damage, haste, and offensive crit debuffs for the entire raid. Plus, of course, they have replenishment to restore raid mana. And they can even dual spec into Divine Sacrifice, giving them 2 separate specs that are useful based on the situation. And don't even think about forgetting Holy Paladins, the best healers in Wrath. The utility and healing output of Holy Paladins is unmatched, and most groups will likely bring 2. Now that you know the 5 easiest classes to get a raid spot in Wrath of the Lich King Classic, I want to hear from you. What's your main class going to be in Wrath? Mine will definitely be Resto Druid, but I'll be playing a Holy Paladin for sure as well. If you liked this video, make sure to check out my Wrath of the Lich King DPS guide. It'll tell you exactly which classes will pump the hardest in Wrath of the Lich King.